Good morning. Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Wilmette Candidate Forum for Wilmette Park District. I am Gail Thomason, co-president of the Wilmette League. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan. It does not endorse candidates or parties. Our mission is to ensure that all eligible voters have the opportunity and information to exercise their right to vote. Civil public discourse is an integral part of our political system. Public discussion strengthens our democratic process, so we thank the candidates and the audience for participating today. The format and rules for this forum were previously agreed to by the candidates, have been posted outside, and are available in a handout today. Finally, our voter's guide is available on our website, lwvwilmette.org, and a few hard copies are here on the table. Our moderator today is Karen Hribar from the League of Women Voters of Arlington Heights. Karen?
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to moderate this forum. My name is Karen Hribar, and I belong to the League of Women Voters of Arlington Heights. This morning, for about the next hour or so, we will be hearing from candidates running for Commissioner of the Wilmette Park District. There are 4 candidates running for 3 four-year terms. There is another candidate who is not here today running unopposed for the 2-year term position. All of today's candidates have agreed to abide by ground rules provided by the League of Women Voters. Some of the rules also apply to the audience. Let me review them. The candidates have drawn numbers this morning to determine speaking order. I will rotate this order during the forum. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. After that, the next seated candidate will answer the first question first, and we will continue this rotation for all of the questions. Candidates at the end have 1 minute to answer each question, after which they will be given 90 seconds to make a closing statement. The closing statements will be given in reverse order of opening statements. League members, here in the front, will act as timers. You will be given a 30-second warning, so please complete quickly your thought when you see the red stop card. I will enforce time limits. The questions are provided by the audience. Each question will be answered by all of the candidates, so please ask questions that pertain to all. League members have index cards available for you to write your questions on. Questions will be reviewed for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. Candidates, please do not interrupt one another, and I will repeat a question if asked. Audience, please turn off all electronic devices. Refrain from applauding or demonstrating in other ways support or non-support of a candidate until the end. Thank you. And now we will hear from the Park District Board Commissioner candidates. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Wolf, will you please begin with your 90-second opening statement?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today and taking part of this wonderful democratic process and hearing the candidates for the Park District. My name is Amy Wolf. I am running for the next 4-year term that's coming up next for the Wilmette Park District Board here. I've lived in this community for 12 years and have become extremely fond of everything that the Park District does here. I have 3 young children who are active users in the park system, as well as my husband and myself. I've served on the board for the last 4 years now and am currently the vice president of the Park District Board. I've also chaired the Parks and Recreation Committee, the Facility Operations Committee, have been a member of the Financial Planning and Policy Committee, have been a member of the Golf Operations Committee, have been a member of the Real Estate Committee, and finally a member of the Intergovernmental Committee here at the Park District. In addition to my Park District service, I am also a board member of the Wilmette Foundation, which is an organization here in Wilmette serving the Park District in a capacity to provide funds for things like the Family Scholarship Program, as well as the Gilson Migratory Bird Habitat Project that we completed last year. Finally, I hope that you all enjoy today and listening to our conversation and our answering the questions, and I hope to have your support on April 4th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott.
Yes, I'm Brian Abbott. I'm proud to have served with Amy for the past 4 years on the Wilmette Park District Board. I'm a 25-year resident, a family man, scout leader. I'm a civil engineer with 37 years of experience guiding design and construction projects. I provide a valuable and unique skill set to the board and the community. It has been my honor to serve on the Wilmette Park District Board. I've chaired the Finance Committee, Lakefront Committee, and currently chairing the Real Estate Committee. I've also served on the other committees as well. I'm running because I strongly believe in the role of the citizen leader. I have volunteered my times and talents as an expression of that belief. I have already earned the President's Lifetime Service Award, and I'm not dead yet, so. My only agenda is to be informed on the issues, listen to our community, and independently use my better judgment. I realize that our parks and our recreational opportunities are discretionary. My role is to be responsive to you while being mindful of balancing the costs and benefits against the benefits you derive. That cost-benefit ratio is something we debate continually, as we should. So it is with some pride, I will tell you, that the Park District taxes went down in our tenure on the board, and the debt has been substantially reduced, and pension plans are in good shape, as are the programs are still in great shape. So I think that we can point to some accomplishments over the past 4 years, and yet the Park District, I believe, has been well managed for many, many years, and our role has been to continue that work. So I bring a valuable technical and analytical skills to the board.
Thank you.
I'm done. Thank you.
Got to stop. Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Good morning. Excuse me. Before I start, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. My wife, Joanne, and I have lived in Wilmette for 35 years. We've lived in 3 different neighborhoods and raised our 3 children here. And the 5 of us have always been enthusiastic users of the Park District programs, facilities, and parks. I'm an active paddle and tennis player. I coached the Wilmette Baseball Association for 12 years. I was the equipment manager and on the board of the Trevian Girls Softball Association, and I coached my daughter's Park District basketball team. I joined the Park District Board of Commissioners about 17 months ago. I was appointed to fill a vacancy when Jim Crowley moved out of town. I was selected for the role primarily for 3 reasons. One being my familiarity with the Park District, the second being my business experience. I'm a CFO and a CPA, and also my independence from any partisan or political agendas. As I mentioned, I am a CPA. I've been a CFO in private industry for 25 years. I'm currently chair of the board's Finance Committee and have provided needed experience and expert counsel to the board and to the Park District staff. I look forward to today's event, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Hi, I'm Christopher Lewis, and I'm running for Wilmette Park Board also. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting and the Wilmette community for attending this event. The reason I'd be a good Park Board Commissioner is my love of the lakefront and Gilson Beach. My family and I spend our summers on the sailing beach, and I'm a frequent user of the park and an advocate for maintaining the natural spaces of the lakefront. I plan on pushing to make the Gilson Lakefront project keep to the mission statement of protecting open spaces and natural resources for future generations, yet be as cost-effective as possible. There's a lot of work to be done, but the hardest part of the project will be communicating with our citizens. Besides the survey, the Park Board is just starting the public input forums, but I feel we can involve the community much more and have more frequent interactions. The project should be a partnership between the parks and the citizens. I'm an IT professional by career, and I've led several large-scale IT projects that spanned many different organizations and was successful in building collaborative solutions. A major goal of those projects has been to increase efficiency and drive down costs. I plan to bring that mindset of doing more with less to the Park Board and to the Lakefront project. Finally, I'm excited to be here today to share with you some more of my ideas for the Park Board. Thank you.
Thank you. And now on to questions, and we will begin with Mr. Abbott. And the first question?
The hot seat.
With the Park District's financial focus currently on the lakefront, what other areas exist for cost savings and why?
Well, that's a broad question and requires a broad answer. And again, yeah, I've served as chairman of the Finance Committee, and we both have our annual capital budget. I mean, we pour through these budgets all year long, and we spend an incredible amount of time in the fall in particular finalizing these budgets and in discussions with each other about how these funds are used. Specifically, gosh, we save money constantly, but it is true that the lakefront is our current focus in terms of how we might be expending capital funds. Other areas of the park, we're not looking at many large-scale capital. We're looking at more replacement of roofs and things like that. And so I think we need to do a better job with regard to bidding processes and making sure that we get a good reaction from the public. And that's about all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. There's a number of things that we're doing as a board to reduce the expenditures within the district. We have already put in place very recently a revised procurement policy for the district, where we are getting more competitive bidding than we maybe have in the past. We've had a number of situations, certainly in my 18 months on the board, where we've had single bidders that arise, even though we've done all of the proper procedures according to the regulations. But there are proactive things we can do to increase participation for suppliers and get us better costing on things that we're going outside to buy. The other thing, too, is this district is funded primarily, even though there's a lot of taxes paid, through the fees paid by users of programs. And our staff has been very good about continually kind of reinventing themselves, creating new programs where there's a need, and the profits from those then go to basically subsidizing other areas of the park where we don't have those revenues.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that we can work to save money. One example would be to enhance our ongoing maintenance and landscaping plans. We do a lot of work with maintaining our buildings, but if we improve that, we'd avoid some costly overruns when the buildings get worn down. Another thing we can look at is more creative solutions. For example, the Lakeview Center was initially slated for an elevator. When the referendum was defeated, the park board came up with a much more cost-effective manner of redoing a ramp rather than spending the big money on the elevator. So I think there's a lot of cost savings that we can look at. I think thinking outside the box and working with other groups in the village will save us lots of money.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf.
As a Park District Board member, I believe that we currently do a pretty good job of going through our budget every year. We have, as Brian mentioned, this big annual binder that we pour through every single department here, making sure that we are being financially responsible. We look at everything down to the dollar to make sure that we're not spending money where we don't need to be. That being said, we have done some things in the past to help save money for the district, which includes refinancing some of our outstanding debt when the interest rates have been low, so we've been able to lower what we need to pay back, so that's saved us some money. We've also put in practice, as Gordon mentioned, more competitive bidding process so that we are getting more companies out there coming to us, giving us competition, which helps to drive down the cost. And finally, one of the things we've done is, as we're doing projects, trying to be more green in the area, making sure our lights are turning off when people aren't in the room, or if we're replacing equipment, that it is more electric, it's less consumption of electricity. So thank you.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Anderson, and the question is, the Park District is involved in helping the village deal with our stormwater problem. What role do you think the Park District should play in this?
The Park District's role is rather limited, I'd have to say, in solving that issue. We can do what we can in the areas that we control. We have the ability to landscape appropriately so that we don't add to the issue, and we can retain, for example, water that comes in these huge storms. And we have worked together with the village on many, many issues, even unrelated to the stormwater, obviously, and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
I think the Park District's open space philosophy in the open areas helped tremendously with the storm runoff. In fact, we have access to the biggest runoff area, which is the lake itself. So working with the village on overflow issues and acknowledging the fact that the park has vast open areas and access to the lake certainly will help. Great example that the park has done is the West Park project with the reservoir there. So I think working with the village and working on very creative solutions, again, thinking outside the box, will certainly help with the water issues.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf?
One of the things that we're proud of in the Park District is putting in plantings so that we can contain all of the extra water at our facilities. Our current facilities are able to retain all of our water on the property so that it's not going out into the village. We are able to put in things like bioswales at our golf course so that, again, the water is not going out into the community but staying on property. And finally, as Chris mentioned, we have worked very closely with the Village of Wilmette on this issue, and we did complete a project at West Park to create a tank, a holding tank, and we will continue to work with the village and other entities such as the MWRD to make sure that the problem of flooding is contained.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott?
Sure, thank you. 1 minute. All right, so I have read the report. Civil engineer, I understand it, and I've been involved with the design and construction of dozens of stormwater projects. This is a science, and I understand it well. In a nutshell, the West Wilmette can handle normal heavy rains. It can't handle these 5-10-year rain events, and they don't happen often, but they're enormously disruptive when they do. The report that's been prepared by the village is some of the criteria is very restrictive. I think as we need to get creative in terms of changing some of those criteria that would undoubtedly save a lot of money in the proposals that are being that could be presented. I would welcome working with the village on this. The parks actually do have a lot, can have a lot to say or help in this matter if the community were faced, for instance, with the idea of a choice between a flooded ball field or a flooded neighborhood. I have a pretty good idea how they might want to go on that. So as good neighbors and as the largest landowner in the village, I think we can do more and should do more. So there are ways engineering around this by nibbling around at the edges. There are less expensive solutions, and I'd go on record as saying I'd like to cooperate with the village and engage in those discussions.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we will begin with Mr. Lewis. And the question is, what are your priorities for improving Gilson Park, and do you favor a comprehensive approach or a more step-by-step approach?
Well, I favor a more step-by-step approach because it will certainly lessen the impact on our community. I think one of the major things we need to think about is the actual beach house and what we can do down there. It's really a building that's used 4 or 5 months out of the year. So anything extensive down there is not necessarily in our best interests. I think primarily we should be looking at shifting the concessions facility into something like food trucks, where we bring more variety of food down there, lessening the footprint at the actual building. I also think that you'd get a much better flow of traffic if you've got more variety of food.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf?
I also am in favor of a step-by-step approach. I think that after we completed the village survey, it became apparent that the referendum was too big for the majority of people in the town. So I would be in favor of trying to take small chunks at a time. I believe our priorities down at the lakefront, the biggest one is the beach house. It is deteriorating and in need of serious repair and replacement. I hear from constituents and people in the community all the time that they don't like going in there and using the bathrooms. They don't like to take their children in there. We really need to rebuild that. In addition, part of that project will be to redo the parking lot down there as well, which is has a huge flooding issue.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott.
Yes, well, I have a lot to say on the lakefront, and again, the experience that I have in terms of design and construction, I have a lot of insights and can provide a lot of help in that regard. I actually believe that the board owes it to the village to provide a more comprehensive plan. In other words, before we start spending reserves down and not understanding where the end game is, we really do have to take community input, which we will start Monday night and also Thursday night at the Lakeview Center, and then at Malincrot for taking public comment on the lakefront. But I think that ultimately, we have to understand the total picture of what we're looking at, comprehensive plan for the lakefront, and then I support going for a referendum, even if it's not a monetary, financial referendum, just for ratification of the plan that is being submitted. I believe that we owe it to listen and then ask before we move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
The priorities for the park, Gilson Park for me, are the beach house, the parking lot, and then shortly followed by the roads and the curbs within Gilson. Anybody who's walked through there has, between tripping over the potholes and the cracks in the road, knows that those need work as well. And I'm not in favor of going through another comprehensive plan at this point. We've waited so long at this point that we have immediate needs that need to be filled no matter what. And we need to get on those as quickly as we can with the proper process up front. It's one of these things where if we go slow, we actually probably go fast by involving the community as much as we can before we get to the point where we have to start construction.
Thank you. The next question, we will begin with Ms. Wolf. And the question is, what role should the Park District play, if any, in helping ensure funding for the Great Lakes Reclamation Project, since there may be federal budget cuts?
I'm not sure, as a Park District Commissioner, how much of a role that we have in providing funding for the Great Lakes. Our role is to maintain our current beachfront, and I believe that we have kind of maintenance of 600 feet out into the water. So beyond that, I'm not sure what we as a park board could do to lobby or anything like that. As that being said, we are part of an Illinois Association of Park Districts as well as a National Association of Park Districts. They, on our behalf, lobby the government in favor of things like the Great Lakes and maintaining of that.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott.
Yeah, well, 90% of the North America's fresh water is in the Great Lakes, and so it's clean, safe water is vital to our nation and its continued strong health. The EPA initiatives that are being cut fund nearly 3,000 projects, Asian carp, prevention of nutrient runoffs, wetlands. The funding for this has enjoyed widespread bipartisan support. When I started agreeing with Scott Walker and Rick Snyder about if vital services, then I think this is a bipartisan issue. What can we do about it? I think as a citizen, and I don't mind lending my title as a commissioner, I would favor maintaining these funds and these programs. I don't know that the park board has much to say beyond that encouragement that these programs need to be continued.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
I think it's important to remember that what's been in the news the last few days is really a statement of the president's priorities, and they're a long way from reality. There's fortunately a process we all have to go through Congress to get budgets done. This is a far stretch from a budget, so I don't think the president's going to be in a situation where he's got, I think, 5 Republican governors on the Great Lakes, as well as at least 3 senators, and his majority in Congress is 2, I think, for purposes of the Senate. So I think this is a long way from being a reality, and I'm counting on it, and certainly don't support where he's going with this, and would, again, we would work through the IAPD primarily in order to get our voice heard, but this is something that's a bipartisan Democratic and Republican issue for the Great Lakes region.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
I, too, agree that this is an issue that is beyond politics. This affects every one of us. And in fact, we've all benefited from the work the EPA has done with the Clean Water Act from the 70s. The lakes have improved tremendously in the past 20 years, and we can tell this when we're sailing because we can see the bottom of the lakes now, and we never used to be able to. Same time with the budgets. NOAA is another issue that sailors and beachgoers have a huge concern with. We watch the weather reports all the time, and funding cuts will be terrible. I think as a park board, it's going to be hard to influence this. We obviously should, whatever we can, and insist that, our voices be heard. But I think this is really a personal issue that every citizen, if they've got concerns, should address their higher-up politicians and make it known that we don't want our lakes to go bad. We don't want to go in reverse. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we will begin with Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
And the question is, are there ways that the Park Department could be more cooperative with other governments, such as for school sports facilities, village stormwater management, and bicycle transportation facilitation?
Well, yes, but that, you have to understand, we are cooperative, enormously cooperative. Amy mentioned the tank that we just built in West Park, which is really a village initiative, but since we have the land, we worked with them very much, and that was a great win-win for both parties. We do work with the schools. I mean, our kids, oh my goodness, I always say they're in the schools, or they're at home, or they're in the parks. And so there's a tremendous amount of cooperation, and I believe in that cooperation. And I just called for more cooperation with regard to the stormwater issue. Dialogue, I think, is always beneficial to the community, and dialogue with you as well. So there is actually a tremendous amount of cooperation. I like the fact that our park district shares the building with the village, for instance. And yes, but beyond, if they ask specifics, I'd have an opinion. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, I don't think maybe the residents realize how much cooperation actually happens between the village and the park district behind the scenes on things you don't really see. There are many, many issues. We just had a bunch of kids in the other day with the student government thing in this room, sitting in these chairs. Even with the West Park expansion that's going on right now, as we work with ComEd and we work with the village to expand parking and increase the number of paddle courts there, there's intergovernment cooperation going on there. Really, it's just limited by our imagination, both ours and the villages, in terms of where we can work with each other.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
I think we should be working with the other divisions in the village and the community as a whole. I think that one thing the Park District should be working heavily with is the traffic issues that occur during the summer on the around the beach areas and the lakefront. There's a huge safety concern with the amount of cars and the speed of cars and people vying for parking. The people on Sheridan Road have asked repeatedly for stop signs and crosswalks in order to protect their children and increase safety. And I think that's very important. I think the Park District should be working with the village on that. At the same time, I think that the Park Board should be working with the other groups to control the debts that we are all exposed to. New Trier High School has got a big $90 million debt. The village is looking at $75 to $80 million for the water and sewer issues, and we've got our own debt that we're paying off, and I think that it helps us all as a community if we can work to manage that debt as a whole.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf?
As Brian and Gordon and everyone has mentioned, we do have a very good relationship with the other branches of government here in the village, one of them being the schools. We continually lease space from the schools for some of our programming, basketball, and other programs that we run. In addition, they lease land from us. Part of the junior high and Highcrest is actually on Park District land, so we have a very long-standing cooperation with them. The village as well, Howard Park that we use for some of our programming, football and softball and things like that, is actually on village land, and we lease that from them. We have a very good relationship as board members. We talk to the members of the other boards, and our staff as well has a great relationship with the other board members in the community.
Thank you. The next question, we will begin with Mr. Anderson. And the question is, There continues to be a lot of concern in the village about congestion at the lakefront, particularly as a result of non-resident use of our parks. Do you think this is a concern the Park District should be addressing, either through policies or user fees? And if so, how?
Goodness. I don't believe we should be addressing it via the use of user fees. The Gilson Park and the beach area is actually partly not our land. We lease some of the land from the sanitary district. In addition, a lot of the land was given to us by the state of Illinois after it was reclaimed by the sanitary district. And it's by regulations, we're responsible to not just Wilmette, but to the entire community for that land. The parking situation down at Gilson on certain times of the summer is rotten. I mean, let's face it. And when we talk about governmental cooperation with the village, it's not a Park District issue, it's not a village issue, it's a total issue for both of us. And I know we can do a better job of policing the park in the sense of behavior that's, if you will, antisocial, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lewis?
It's an interesting question when you start looking at the user fees. We obviously don't want to raise them too much, but we might have to invoke and encourage proper behavior. I think one thing that we should be looking at is trying to manage the traffic and the parking a little bit better. We've got the big lot over here at the metro station, and if we could encourage people to park there and maybe offer a shuttle service or encourage the use of the Pace buses, that would certainly decrease the amount of traffic at the lakefront. The traffic, as I said before, is a huge safety issue for people that live down there and their children. So traffic flow and managing the traffic flow is something that we're always going to constantly be looking at. I know that there's been examinations of zone parking and the issues associated with that, and I don't think there's a good solution, but I think that by working with the village and the traffic management committee, we can come up with a very good solution to this issue.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf?
I believe that there is an issue with this as well. I think that we need to work with the village, as we just mentioned, and maybe do some sort of a traffic study and look at ways that we could affect the congestion down there. This could also be part of the plan that we are putting together to look at the roads within the park. Maybe there's a different way we look at the flow within the park and there's not two entrances but one, or we have to come up with a creative solution that will work for the park as well as the residents around there. And finally, I think we need to encourage people maybe to bike. I know this is a great community, a lot of bikers around here, and if we, as we're looking at redoing the parking lot and the roads in the park, have a way for people to bike into the park more easily, there's more clearly guided ways for pedestrians as well, I think that would be a great solution to ease congestion down there.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott?
First off, I agree with the ideas and proposals that the other candidates have mentioned, and we've certainly been talking about it. And as we go forward with the lakefront plan, we are trying to implement these. Now I'll get into a little bit of a trouble here. So it's, as I like to say, it's a park, it's not a club. The land was created by Cook County. Every taxpayer in Cook County was given to Wilmette for free. Non-residents provide over $500,000 per year to us for using just the swim beach area. We operate in the black because we are open and accepting and let people come in. So in fact, taxpayers are not funding other people's use of the park. They're actually funding, and they pay more. They pay a lot more in order to use these facilities. Parks across the world, it's one of the greatest things we do for each other, and I've enjoyed parks around the world, and I think we need to be careful when we start talking about limiting use. We are stewards of the lakefront. We don't own the lake, and I invite anyone from China, Germany, Glenview to come see their lake. So that's it.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Lewis.
Thank you.
What is your opinion on the current level of Park District revenues, whether they are sufficient and when it is appropriate to use them?
If I understand my numbers correctly, I believe in 2015, there was a move to shift the reserve funds from a $7 million cap to a $4 million cap. That The reserves are currently used to fund cash flow issues and paying for services over time, and issues such as when the tennis courts had their issues and paying for that kind of stuff until insurance kicked in. I think what's happened over time is that the park board and the village has tried to raise the reserves in order to plan for the expenses that are occurring at the lakefront. It's a tricky topic. You don't want to raise taxes and put aside too much money. But at the same time, we certainly don't want to incur any more debt, and we don't want to raise taxes if we don't have to. I think that with the plans that are coming for the beachfront, trying to minimize our costs will help deal with the excess reserve funds.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf?
I was actually on the financial committee when we made the decision to try to keep our reserves around $4 million. We felt that that was a good place to be for several reasons. One, it gave us enough funds that if we needed to do something in an emergency situation, we have the money. Two, it also keeps our credit rating high. We are AA1 rated by Moody's, which is an excellent credit rating, which allows us to have a very low interest rate if we do go out and borrow money. So we don't want to dip our reserves too low because that will affect our credit rating. That being said, we don't want our reserves too high either because we want to make sure that we're not taking too much money from the public. We want to make sure that we're taking just the right amount to run the park district in an efficient, financially respectful manner.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott?
Fiscal responsibility is our job, and I feel it's our primary job. You know, we try to provide great services, but you've got to watch the dollars. It's hard work. You know, as Amy kind of mentioned, we recently refinanced all of our bonds, which is going to save us like $750,000. It's work. We scramble for, you know, the dollars here. We try to scrape a little bit aside every year. As Amy mentioned, $4 million is our minimum. We figure that is good standard practice. And beyond that, we are obviously trying to pool a little bit at a time every year, trying to save up some money for the lakefront. And so we're looking at the reserves. We have a chart that tracks them year by year, and we are looking at the reserves. We realize that is, we do our jobs well, then we can scrape a little bit extra money aside for you and spend it down at the lakefront where clearly the community wants some improvements made.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, the decision to spend down the reserves that happened a few years ago was, I think, important because it was money that had been taken from the taxpayers and was just sitting there, and it was put to good use. So I think that decision was smart. Keeping a $4 million level is appropriate for exactly the reasons that Amy said. It is something that the rating agencies like to see at least $4 million from us, and also we do need a rating day fund. We have the ability with the funds that we're getting today to pay down the debt on schedule that is happening in 2019, 2021, 2022 as this debt steps down. We also have the ability to fund the capital projects that are on the plan right now for Gilson Park and for the beach. So those are important to me. We can do those without going back and getting any more referendum debt.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Ms. Wolf. What specific ideas do you have for improving communication between the Park District and the community it serves?
I'm a huge proponent of being transparent as to what we are doing on the park board, and it has actually been one of my personal goals in the past on the board to increase our communication with the public. Specifically, one of the things we have done is increasing our social media use, getting more information out there via Twitter, Facebook, those kind of platforms. In addition, we have started doing a monthly email to everyone in the Park District database, kind of letting everyone know what's going on with the Park District happenings, registrations, sign-ups. And finally, one of my big pushes was to do an email after our board meetings to let people know what the board is deciding, what upcoming decisions we're going to be making, what topics we're going to be discussing, so that people really have a sense of what is going on at the board level. Finally, as the chair of the Parks and Rec Committee, we are in the process of redesigning our website for the Park District. We feel that an easier-to-use website will allow people to navigate and find the information in a faster, more convenient way.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott.
That's a great answer. So, well, first off, thank you all for being here, because there is no single better way of communicating indirectly, and it warms our heart when we have residents who come to our meetings, or we can address them directly. I agree with the goal of transparency in government. The Open Meetings Act calls for us to actually discuss these things with each other in public meetings. And our previous media superintendent retired, and God bless her, she was wonderful. I don't know how she did all the things. You get that program and that mailing guide, it's absolutely amazing. But we did hire a new media superintendent, young guy, Marlon, who's really terrific and really concentrating on social media, on web-based communications. And so we are moving in that direction, trying to make sure that you have access to the Parks District and the programs and what's happening anytime you need it.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
I was appointed to the board about 6 months after the referendum, and I agree with the comments that Amy and Brian have made. The board learned a lot from the referendum about communication. They will be the first to admit it, as did the staff. And also, we continue to learn, for example, with the bird habitat. There were some things we did really well with that, and some things we did poorly with that, and we have addressed those issues. Primarily, there was a question with the people who were located closest to the bird habitat were not directly contacted in a manner that they felt they knew what was going on. And so there's a certain obligation on our part to make sure that happens, also an obligation on the residents' part to participate as well.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
I think our communication is best served by more interaction with our community. If you look at the village right now, they've got several commissions, such as the zoning, transportation, and plannings, that are actually made up of citizens and not trustees. The school district does the same thing with their PTA organizations. They've got large numbers of people that are involved with the schools. The village actually, or the Park District should start looking at adding citizens as advisors or chairs on the various committees that we have. We've got a huge resource of people in Wilmette that are very intelligent and very knowledgeable about the various issues. In fact, this was done in an ad hoc manner with the Lakefront Commission in 2011, I believe. And I think that practice of asking citizens to step up and volunteer their time should be a standard part of the park board and its charter.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Abbott.
Yep.
Are you supported by a third-party PAC, and what would you say to residents who might be concerned about the influence PACs might have on our local elections?
I'm not even sure if I have support of all my friends. Like I said it earlier, my only agenda is to be informed on the issue and listen to our community and independently use my better judgment. One of the great things of serving on local boards is that they are nonpartisan, and we appreciate that. I know you're going to speak to that in a minute. Fiscal responsibility, great programs, that's our agenda. That's our community. And that's what we look for. They're not ideological issues. We don't sit around and talk to each other about ideological national issues. We talk to each other about money and programs and what can we do to build a great community. And it's wonderful. I love that. I don't know the Democrats or the Republicans on this board. I really don't know who they are. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Anderson.
I have not been approached by any PAC, nor have I reached out to any PAC for any support. I, again, was brought onto the board. I think one of the three reasons was the fact that I had no political affiliation or agenda. I've been very pleased on the board as I joined it 6 months after the prior election, that it was really hard to tell who was a no person and who was a yes person. Everybody was dealing with each other very professionally and at a very local level. I think we're all looking for value for the dollars we spend, and we value our independence.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, the park board and the other village entities are nonpartisan elections. I believe there should be no external influences on our local elections. However, we don't live in a bubble. We all watch the evening news, and we all read newspapers and online services. We need a good mental filter to filter out what's external and what's appropriate for the village. At the same time, I don't think blind and unfounded accusations have a place in our local politics. These equally can turn neighbor against neighbor. We all live here, and when this is all done, common sense and good manners and treating each other with a respect go a long way to helping us get our issues solved.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf?
I have not been approached by any PACs. I haven't taken any money from any PACs or anything like that, or been supported by any PACs. That being said, I think that we as a community are made up of individuals of all different backgrounds, all different experiences, and different opinions. And I think we as a board need to take into account everyone's opinion who lives in our village. I don't think we need to have external influences on policy or decisions that we're making at our board. But we want to hear from everyone in the community because we're a community together, and that's why we call this home.
Thank you. We have a last question, and we will begin with Mr. Anderson. And this question is, where does Sailing Beach and improved restroom and office facilities there fit within your priorities for park improvements?
As I mentioned earlier, the lake house and the parking lot would be first for us, for me anyway, and I think for the board, followed by the roads and curbs, just the basic infrastructure within Gilson. And then at that point, then we could prioritize improvements at the Sailing Beach.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Sailing Beach is near and dear to my heart. Kelly and I and our family spend our entire summers down on the beach. And I think that as we start looking at the beachfront and the beachfront reconstruction, that anything that we can do down there to improve traffic and make it safer will help. Right now, the portalettes exit right out onto the road entry into the Sailing Beach, and it's a huge safety hazard. At the same time, replacing and redoing the infrastructure at the Sailing Beach is something that we should look at while the entire beachfront is torn up, and not something that we do 5 years from now, because it could damage the work that that's already been done. And I don't want to waste money by redoing the same thing that we did 2 years ago.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf?
I believe that our priorities down at the beach lie with the beach house, the parking, the roads, and the sewers. We did the community survey. We asked people what they thought of the Sailing Beach. It was not something that was rated as a high priority within our community. That being said, if the community was to come to us in the future and say that they felt strongly about putting in bathrooms and office space at the Sailing Beach, I would love to listen, and I would love to work with those in the community to see that happen if it's something that the majority of people thought was a good use of our tax dollars.
Thank you. And last, Mr. Abbott.
So there was a structure in the previous plan that got voted down for bathrooms and a sailing structure. The survey does not indicate a tremendous amount of support. Now, having said that, I realize the sailors only represent a relatively smaller proportion of the community. But, the board kind of stuck their neck out the last time to put that in there and got criticized for that sailing structure. Now, I can stick my neck out again, but it's incumbent upon the sailors to make this an issue and, sell their case to the community, because ultimately we have to represent the entire community.
Thank you. That's it for questions, and now we will hear closing statements of 90 seconds each, and we will begin in reverse order of the opening statements. So, Mr. Lewis, would you begin your closing statement?
Certainly. I'd like to close by first thanking the Park Board and the staff for their openness and their help in navigating the waters of this campaign. I've tried to run an independent campaign and have accepted no money from anybody throughout this process. My primary concern around the campaign have always been Gilson and the lakefront. Keeping the beach house from being overly built is my top priority. The beach house and the parking lot plans need to be built with a mission of protecting our open spaces and natural resources, not building up the area to drive revenue. We should also plan wisely and not miss the opportunity to do some simple fixes to the Sailing Beach for safety. And as I stated earlier, I believe that communication is the key to the Park District, and I think adding citizens to the committees by appointment will result in a better and broader input and better communication. Again, it was done in an ad hoc manner with the Lakefront Commission, and I believe that this should be a practice that becomes part of the Park District and our philosophy. I'd like to ask for your vote on April 4th, and thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
All 4 candidates for the 3 open positions on the Park District Board are qualified to serve, and I look forward to working with the other 2 winning candidates should I be elected. So why do I deserve one of your votes on April 4th? I'm a CPA and a CFO with experience in finance and accounting, benefit programs, risk management, construction projects, and service operations with a large seasonal base of employees. I'm the only board member or candidate with all these qualifications. Because of this background, I was appointed chair of the Finance Committee, where I've helped the Park District get a reduction in health benefit costs after 10 years of annual increases averaging more than 9%. We've improved the budgeting process, we've incorporated multi-year financial projections into our planning for the major capital expenditures, and we've upgraded our procurement policies and procedures. I'm committed to funding the upcoming capital spending at Gilson and the Lakefront with existing tax revenues, avoiding referendum debt. I'm also committed to allowing the Park District's share of our tax bills to decline from the current 6% of the bill as scheduled debt service payments end in coming years. We have, on April 1st, where the Park District Finance Superintendent is retiring, and in Springfield, there are calls for property tax freezes, either permanent or temporary, depending on whether it's Mr. Rauner or the Democrats. And there's a real need for financial expertise on the board, and I fill that role. I look forward to the opportunity to continue to serve, and thank you for your consideration, and please come out and vote on April 4th.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott?
Thank you, Gordon. A diversity of skill sets on any board is a very good idea, and again, I bring my particular skill sets to this board, and I believe it's been valuable. I realize that I'm an incumbent, so I'm running a bit on my record. So I just do want to note that Park District taxes the last 4 years went down as promised because the debt went from $23 million down to $14 million. As that debt goes down, the debt payments have gone down as well. But so we paid off a significant amount of debt. Pension plans are in good shape. So there has been a long history of good fiscal management, and I believe that I've been contributing to that. I realize that our spending on parks is discretionary. That's extremely important, and I believe that we always must balance those costs against the benefits. My guiding principles are to be open and responsive to the community, to use my engineering background to benefit the community, and as the decisions we make should be made based on a solid understanding of the details. Constantly work towards providing excellent services at reasonable costs, carefully weigh those costs against the benefits. I am independent. I consider myself very well informed. I'm asking for your vote. I enjoy giving back to the community. I am first alphabetically, but last on the ballot. So don't pass me by. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And Ms. Wolf?
Thank you for the League of Women Voters for hosting us all today. It's such a wonderful event, and I think it's such a great asset for the community to be able to come out and hear the candidates speak firsthand. Over the last 4 years, the Park Board has made many improvements to our already wonderful park system. We've improved our already existing facilities, we've built new facilities, we've added requested programming from the citizens, we've maintained a tight budget, we've changed our direction based on community input. We've maintained and improved our natural resources. We've worked with other units of government, and we've increased our communications with the public. I feel that because of my strong business and work experience, my personal experience in the community, I've become a really good listener and also a very creative problem solver. So I've had the privilege of working on this board for the past 4 years, and I hope to have another 4 years, and I hope to have your vote on April 4th.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to all the candidates.
Thank you, guys.
Well done.
Don't forget to vote April 4th.
They're giving us the bums rush now.
Yep, out of it.